Derek Stingley absolutely got the bag, getting a 3-year, $30 million per year extension with the Texans. They were extremely petty and guaranteed 89 million of it. So 1 million not guaranteed. They can thereby, get off of him with only a 29 million dead cap at the last year should they desire. That's going to make all the difference in the world. So the deal overtakes JC Horn as the highest paid defensive back in the league and of all time. Horn absolutely did not deserve to be the highest paid defensive back of all time. No offense to him. He has a ton of potential. Let's see if Stingley does. Derek Stingley was PFF's 37th best defensive back this year in the regular season. The year before, he was 21st in defensive back rank for the regular season. And 2 years ago, he had a very rough rookie year. Struggled with injuries as well, so that's part of it. He struggled with injuries as well in year two. His rookie year, he was the 216th ranked defensive back, so that's pretty rough. But, that's year one. Cornerbacks, usually a position that take a very long time to get going. That doesn't really matter all that much. So, quarterbacks with a better 2-year PFF peak since 2022 are Patrick Surtain, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Johnson, Sauce Gardner, and corners that are close in their peak ranks for that 2-year peak are Christian Benford, Marlon Humphrey, and Devon Witherspoon. Witherspoon doing it in only 2 years, whereas we have a 3-year sample for Stingley. So the fact that Witherspoon is close with Stingley, I would favor Witherspoon because he's, again, doing it in a rookie year that is often difficult. So Stingley played 69th, nice, most amount of cornerback man coverage. That's the rate of man coverage. The only aforementioned cornerbacks that played a lower percent than him are Jalen Ramsey, Jalen Johnson, and Christian Benford. That isn't to say that Stingley can't thrive in man coverage because, it's going a ways back at this point, but he did famously erase a ton of very talented receivers in the SEC his freshman year. So he has shown a capacity for doing great things in man coverage, but at the pro level, he's not being asked to do a ton of man coverage, especially compared to other elite cornerbacks. So Stingley, his peak PFF grade is an 82 rating. That happened with DeMeco Ryans being the defensive guru. And the reason I bring this up is in 1 year in San Francisco with Ryans, Charvarius Ward also saw a career peak. It was an 83 grade. So, it's very similar. The edge, of course, goes to Ward, but that's a 2-year sample size with Ryans for Stingley and just 1 year for Ward, and Ward outdid him. What makes this really a problem for me is that, as we all know, essential to coverage is, of course, the pass rush that makes, the back end job much easier if guys can get in quickly. That year that Ward outperformed ever so slightly Stingley in his best year was 2022. San Francisco helped Ward by having the 5th best pass rush win rate at 46%. This year, Houston was number 1 with 49%. These stats definitely put the Stingley extension in a bad light because he's just not being put in the most difficult situations. He's playing only outside corner, whereas Humphrey, Witherspoon, they're playing inside and outside. MacDuffie to some extent as well. Ramsey is playing chiefly nickel, which is arguably harder than outside because you have to cover, you know, every inch of the field because you're not pressed up against the sideline as an additional defender. So all of that makes for a little bit of an easier job for Stingley. And yes, he's definitely thrived with Ryen's as the guy calling the shots, but it kind of devalues the impact that he has because it's not to say that you can just replace him with anybody, but it's much easier to replace an outside corner that primarily plays a lot of zone than it is to play a corner that follows the best receiver wherever they go and, locks them up in man coverage. So, with that said, if you want to be optimistic, there definitely is a world where Stingley can be worth the money, but to do so, he must improve. And that's not to say he's been bad to this point, but he does need to play at a higher level to, show his value as the number 1 paid defensive back, and pretty handedly the number 1 paid defensive back at this moment. He also needs to improve, especially as the team worsens with him and other young Texans players increasing so much in their cap, because, it seems like forever away, and it sort of is, but Stroud only has 2 more years on his rookie contract. Then he does have the sort of in between contract value of the 5th-year option if they go that route, if they don't sign him into an extension before then. But either way, the 5th-year option is likely going to roughly double Stroud's salary. So that's going to cut into the money a lot. Will Anderson's going to be coming up on a contract, a year at the same year as Stroud. Actually, a year before, because he's not going to get the 5th-year option more than likely. It will go to Stroud. There's a lot of players that are going to be getting very high-end money. So the overall talent of the team is going to be shrinking with them not being able to pay everybody. Another thing that factors into this contract is Stingley needs to stay healthy. As I mentioned before, that's been quite an issue for him. In fact, he's had 1 healthy year since 2020, and I'm not being stingy and saying, he missed a game here, that's not a healthy year. No, I mean, when he misses games, he misses 6 or more games in a season. So if you want to be optimistic, you can say he had a healthy year this past year. That's true. He played every game, but that's his first healthy year since 2020. 2 years of college, missed a ton of games. 2 years in the pros, missed a ton of games. I'm generally of the belief that players are just generally more unfortunate with injuries than they are actually being susceptible to increased injury risk. But that's kind of alarming no matter how you slice it in the case of Stingley. So, in addition to playing better and playing more, Stingley's also going to have to play harder roles for the most part, which by that I mean more man coverage and maybe learn nickelback like some of the other great defensive backs have done. Ramsey has done that. Of course, Humphrey and Witherspoon, I mentioned, play a lot in the nickel. Derwin James, a safety that's playing in the nickel because it's such a valuable position. Lots of guys are playing, one position and also nickel or converting to nickel. So he's going to have to learn some additional responsibilities and just play harder responsibilities. So to do that will be to take off some of the stress for the coming lesser supporting talent as a result of him getting paid so much and others soon to be getting paid a lot more. All of that is possible, but it's definitely not probable. Even for a cornerback such as him that's really flashed throughout his career, dating back to being a freshman in college, he's been just absolutely insanely good for spurts, but it's going to have to be a much more healthy situation than it has been. And he's probably going to have to take it up a notch as well, like I said. So the too long didn't watch of this is that $5 million a year more than defensive back number 2 in salary, which is inflated, if anything, due to the Panthers sucking and having to pay a scrub tax where, to keep your own players or bring in new players, you have to overpay because why would you want to play with Carolina at the moment? So, yes, Horn is not the same caliber of Stingley at the moment, but I think it kind of is offset by the fact that the Panthers suck and the Texans are, in the mix to compete for a Super Bowl. So I think that money is wild, and that's coming from someone that's supported him being drafted before Sauce Gardner, for example, and also someone who thinks coverage is more essential than pass rush, which is worthy of a video in and of itself. I just think this is a contract that's very risky, both in injury regards, but also just for him to make up the value of this contract. You're expecting him to improve and improve while doing harder things. And that's just a really tough proposition for me, especially too, because Ryen's has shown the propensity to get great things out of, pretty much any cornerback he's touched, basically any defensive player in general that he's touched. Those are my thoughts on this massive Derek Stingley extension. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comment section, and also be sure to like and subscribe for more football content.